YouTube, and welcome back to the Loose Transistor channel. I'm your host Lucas, and we're here today to talk about our second episode of our GIT series. And the purpose of this GIT series, as I said the first time around, is that I want to help out people who are just getting into the hobby, or people who are not sure if they want to be in the hobby, to give them an idea of what it takes to get in, to get started, and what are good paths to progress your skill. So in the first episode of the series, we talked about simulators, and I told you guys my take on the current state of simulators and which ones you should be looking into if you're a complete novice or if you're really looking to push your craft. Today, as promised, we're going to be talking about gear. So this is basically advice that I hope that people had given me when I first started and when I started buying this stuff. Part of the reason I didn't get that advice is because I probably didn't ask the right people, but at the same time, I figured that in this video format, I'll be able to help some of you guys out that are still trying to figure out what you should buy to get started in the hobby. So let's get started talking about what I consider to be one of the key pieces of the whole FPV component, which are your goggles. So you're going to need goggles to do FPV, like that's just a given. So I'm going to be talking to you guys about the goggles and just giving you a brief overview on them and telling you guys how much they cost and a few of the features. And if you want to do a little bit more research about them, I will have links and everything in the description so you can check them out and see if this is what you're looking for. So let's get started. Let's talk about the first set of goggles and the cheapest ones that I've found, which are really good if you're just getting started. You have no idea if you really want to dive into this thing, or you're limited on your budget. Check out the EACHINE EV800. There's also the EV700, but the reason I'm saying the EV800 is because it has all the features that I would consider a complete package for a set of goggles. So they're a single screen set of goggles with one of those lenses, and it goes over your face, and it's not the most beautiful thing ever, but that's not what this is about. This is about getting you flying with FPV and getting used to it, because it does take some getting used to for sure. So the EV700 will probably get you there for about $70. It has a single receiver, but it's all you're going to need when you're just starting out. 800 by 480 screen, and you can actually charge it via USB because it has a built-in battery, 2000 milliamp, which gives you about 3.5 hours, and you can charge that from a USB or a cell phone bank, anything like that. It does have R-band, which is the reason why I picked this over the EV700. The EV700 does not have R-band, and the R-band is super useful when you're flying with other people, which we're going to talk about when we talk about FPV etiquette, which will be coming up in one of the next episodes. So the R-band is very, very useful when you're trying to fly with a lot of people in the air at the same time. It also does have an auto search, so you can just like put it on your face, press the auto search button, and you'll pick up the next strongest signal. So if you're flying by yourself, that's super easy. Whatever channel you had last, it does not matter. So this is a very good option for you guys who are just getting in or really, really limited on your budget. The next one on my list for budget options, and I wanted to give you guys an option that had diversity receivers so that you could have a patch and a circular polarized antenna to really give you like a nice long range in one direction and get a good omni around you, would be the EACHINE VR D2 Pro. Also the same size screen, 800 by 480, 5-inch, but it does have the diversity receiver, which is a really, really nice touch. It also has a built-in DVR, so you can start recording your footage straight from your goggles into a little SD card, just like you have in the FATSHARKs or the more advanced goggles, and can all be yours for about $105, which is a pretty good package, I would consider. And if you have the budget for it and you're just getting started, I might go with the VR D2 because of the diversity and because of having all these other features as well. It does have an adjustable focus, which is a nice feature. You can just slide it back and forth on the side here, so it'll adjust the magnification. And it also has a 2200 milliamp battery pack, which will give you about 3.5 hours as well. So moving up on the ladder of cost, we have the FATSHARK transformer. And the reason I picked the FATSHARK transformer is because it's kind of a unique price point and offering. So it's at about $340 if I remember correctly. Again, all these links are going to be down below. You can check it out. Prices are going to vary according to your geographic location. So I'm just going to tell you the ballparks. So the Transformer AG is interesting because it has a removable screen, and you can use that with a stationary or on your remote, and then some people are not comfortable having their face and not being able to look up at the quad, so that's an interesting middle ground, because you can have both. And it does have a diversity receiver, and it's backed by FATSHARK, which we know makes some pretty amazing stuff. I know it is good quality, but it's a bit pricier, about $340. I don't necessarily recommend these goggles for anyone in particular, unless you really want to have the whole removable screen thing and that appeals to you. This is a good goggle to check out. It is 720p, so 1280 by 720, which is a much higher so it's a bit higher resolution, which you might want. It has the removable screen, as I said, diversity, and interchangeable optics, which allow you to have the same focusing or the changing the magnification of the screen. However, those are sold separately, so take that as it may. Moving up a little bit more on the ladder here, I wanted to talk about two sets of goggles, and one of them I have great fondness for because it was the first set of goggles that I got pretty much, and I know it's a really, really good quality piece. So if you have room in your budget and you want like something really solid that you can probably use for years and years and years, check out the FATSHARK Attitude V4s. I had the Attitude V3s, and those were already pretty great, but they only ship with the regular receiver with the little button on the top. The new one has an OLED screen, and it's much, much easier to use, and it has a built-in DVR, which the old one did not. So it's almost like a full Dominator. Like seriously, they're about $450, which is a bit more expensive, but between the FATSHARK transformer and this, I would take this all day long. The built-in DVR, the screen is super nice. It's actually bigger than the Dominator V3 in terms of height, which I prefer. It gives you a more rounded view, I imagine. However, with all FATSHARK products, especially the ones that are binocular vision, you must try before you buy. There is a thing called the IPD, which is the interpupillary distance, which is the distance between the very center of each one of your eyeballs, and the FATSHARK has a limited range as to how it can adjust that binocular vision. And you kind of have to have them pretty much dead on or you'll get blurring. So it goes from 59 to 69, I believe. So check your IPD before you buy a FATSHARK, or at least put one on before you buy one. Seriously, even though I'm recommending the FATSHARK Attitude V4 for like the mid-budget range at $450, like do try them out before you buy them because they do not always work for everybody, and some people just don't like them, so try them out. So it has the 32, so the screen is a little bit bigger, it has 32 degrees of field of view. It does not have diversity, but it is a really nice package. And this one, the Attitude V4, ships with an 18650 battery pack, which you can swap out, and it gives you a longer lifetime. So I'd highly recommend this for the mid-budget range at about $450. Another contender in that mid-budget range, which I unfortunately don't have much experience myself, but have heard very many good things about, is the MOA Commander. And part of the reason why I am talking about the Commander is because it does have diversity. And by the way, both the Attitude V4 and the MOA Commander have race band, and everything moving on forward here is going to have race band technically, but we'll get to that. So the MOA Commander, I don't have much experience with it, but it's similar to the FATSHARKs in terms of having one screen per eye and the adjustment. So I would again say that if you're going to buy the MOA Commanders, you might want to try them before you buy them. I believe they have a similar adjustment range as the FATSHARKs. So yeah, that pretty much covers our mid-budget range. Now we're getting into really the high end. And actually for the high-end stuff, I'm really only going to discuss the two goggles that I really have experience with, which is the Dominator V3 and the HD3, or the HD2s in my case. The HD2s are fantastic, and if you have the money to drop on the HD series of goggles from FATSHARK, I'd say do it because they are really, really nice. They have about 42 FOV on the HD3s, which are available now, and I think 45 on the older HD2s, which is what I have. And like literally, they all pretty much fill your whole eye range with the screen, and it's pretty amazing. However, a lot of people complain about blurring because the screen is bigger, and a lot of times you do get a little bit of blurring. Even I do get a tiny little bit of it, but I don't mind. Honestly, having that FOV, I'm mostly focused in the center of the screen anyway, and it really helps out with the large FOV cameras that I use, because I run 1.8 on all my quads, so that gives me about 160 degrees of horizontal field of view, I believe. And yeah, that's quite a bit. So trying to cram that all into a tiny screen is not great. You lose a lot of detail. So on Dominator V3, the screen is very narrow, but it is wide, so it does work, but it is a much smaller screen, although the two have very, very comparable set of features in terms of both having like adjustable screens, adjustable IPD, they both have DVR, and they both have a bay for receiver. But here's the caveat. Neither the HD2 or HD3 or the Dominators ship with a receiver. Everything else that I talked about above, everything there ships with a receiver. So you're basically paying what is there on the sticker, and that's it. On the case of the HD2, HD3, or Dominator V3, you're spending the $600+ plus you have to buy some sort of receiver. So I would only really recommend Dominator V3s, HD2s, or HD3s for somebody who's already experienced or is looking for really like the top of the line and they have the money to spend. Otherwise, I'd say Attitude V4s or probably the EACHINE VRD2 would be my recommendation if you're an absolute beginner and just getting in and don't want to spend a lot of money. A lot of people do prefer the single screen viewpoint, and they find that that works better for them. So there's no like in quads, probably the best advice that I can give you is this: if it works for you and you're happy with it, then do it, because it's probably the right thing to do. I mean, if you're doing something really, really wrong and that's dangerous, somebody's probably going to tell you and you're going to find out right away. But other than that, like if these goggles work for you, awesome. Don't worry about what they look like. It doesn't matter. You're racing, you're flying. That's all that really matters. So, all right, guys. So that pretty much wraps it up in terms of goggles. So let's just to recap real quick. If you're just starting out, check out the EV800s or the VRD2 from EACHINE. And if you're really, you have a bit more money to spend, you have a mid-budget tier, check out the Attitude V4s. Great goggles, and I can definitely vouch for the Attitude and the FATSHARK stuff because that's what I run as well. All right, so now that we covered the FPV aspect of the gear, let's talk a little bit about radios, because that is the second part of the most important components that you need to be able to go out and fly. You need a radio. You need something to link up to your craft and be able to control it. So I'm going to give you guys a few options of radios that I know are solid enough and that you can use to fly quads, because one thing to keep in mind when you're flying quads is that A, the ranges we're flying at aren't that great. B, you do not need that many channels. You really, really, really don't. I believe you only really need 4 channels, maybe 3. So really keep those things in mind. You don't need a crazy radio to fly. You just need something that is dependable, has a really solid link, has enough channels to run a quad, and you like holding it and it feels nice in your hands and you like the way it flies. So let's talk about, first of all, let's start with the FrSky XM, which is the cheapest radio that I think has merit and you might want to look at if you're like really just getting started or just building your first FPV package. It's about $55, so it's super, super cheap. It does have just a simple LCD screen, and it does have some configuration for models and all the different sort of features that you would expect out of a fully featured radio. It has a decent range, and for $55, you really can't go wrong, especially if you're just learning. I mean, the range on that thing is gonna it's going to far outrange your skill. So don't worry about it. If you're just starting out, FrSky XM is good to go, especially if you are on a budget. But if you have a little bit of money to spend, sorry, before I move on to the next one, I should talk about the receiver. The receiver is about $12, so you really can't go wrong with that. It is a diversity receiver for about $5, which is the FrSky X6B. So moving on a little bit up the chain here in terms of cost, but actually a very, very well featured radio is actually the Radiolink AT9 and the AT9S. They clock in at about $100 nowadays. Like, they've really come down in price. And I would have to say that the Radiolink AT9, AT9S is essentially a Futaba clone. So I'm gonna pop it out here because that is the radio that I run. And I keep it in a nice little case here, but here we have it. So the Radiolink AT9, and mine I have modded here to receive an RPSMA antenna so that I can change my antennas and swap them out, which really, really helps. But this is a great little radio. It has built-in memory for your models. It's really, really easy to navigate and change your settings with the round circles over here. And I actually really, really like the gimbals on this guy too. And for $100, you really do get a very, very rich package with this thing. It has RSSI. The radio will vibrate in your hand if you start losing signal. It's fully configurable, fully tunable. Like, every option that you could possibly imagine is here. It has great range, like super, super good range. I think you can totally fly this thing out to like about 2 kilometers in a clear, nice, open line of sight area, like no problem. And it has probably more doodads and buttons and things that you need. Seriously, like I use one switch for arming and then the sticks for flying, and that's pretty much it. And this thing has held up really, really good for me over the years. Another bonus of this thing is that you can, on the newer models especially, they have a UFL port on this thing. I cannot understand for the life of me why like the Tyrannus or the QX7 don't have a UFL already on the radio receiver here, because you can just pop that out and put it on RPSMA, or if you break your antenna, you can just pop that out and put a new one on. On the Tyrannus X90 and the QX7, you have to solder these things. Like, that's archaic to me. And like, this is a $100 radio that actually has a UFL port, so you can just replace it and put RPSMA and have your radio mod right then and there. Like, so easy. Or if you break your antenna, just swap it out. So $100 gets you the radio, and here's the best part. I'm gonna put a picture of it there. They just released a new receiver, the R12 DSM. So I've been running the R6 DSM or R9 DSM right here, and the R6 DSM right here, which is just a tiny little micro receiver. I do not like these very much. They're not great, especially because of the single antenna. It's a bit short. These guys here are great. RSSI, everything, full range, like no problem. And it's small enough, like it's thin enough that it's fine. And it's about $20 for one of those, and it's about Sorry, and it's about 25 bucks for one of these and about 20 bucks for these. Here's the best part. Radiolink just released a new receiver that is 16 bucks and has diversity. Like 2 antennas is just like the XM Plus from the Taranis X9D. I'm not making this video to shit on Taranis or shit on anybody's radio. It's just telling you guys information that I wish I had known and that I know now because I just took a gamble on Radiolink. I bought a HeliPal ready-to-fly kit. It came with a Radiolink and I had no idea what it was. It seemed decent enough. I figured eventually I'd upgrade, but I have not yet had a reason to it. The radio is excellent, super solid. I've had maybe 3 fail-safes ever and they were entirely my fault. And the price is just great. Yeah, the receivers are super cheap and it's all S-Bus, super easy to wire. So anyway, moving along here. So 100 bucks, Radiolink, very good mid-tier, very good even beginner if you have a little bit more of a budget. So let's move on to the Taranis. And the reason why we must speak about Taranis, even though I don't run it, is because Taranis is the de facto, what I would consider pretty much a standard in the industry today. There are so many Taranis X9Ds out there, like literally you will see them everywhere and you will hear them chirping at you about RSSI and low voltage and all sorts of annoying shit all the time. But whatever, it's a great radio. It has OpenTX, allows you to do all sorts of crazy configuration, including uploading Lua scripts that allow you to tune your quad and change your VTX channels directly from the radio, which is not anything that I know any other radio does. So that's amazing. Definitely not something you're going to get with the Radiolink 89 for sure. So if you really need smart audio, you need that sort of stuff, Taranis all the way. Like the more features you start adding, the more connectivity, you're definitely going to end up having to move over to Taranis. I just don't care about that stuff. Like to me, I'm just all about the flying and simplifying my life. But if you need that stuff, then there's 2 options for you that I would really consider. And the first one would be the QX7, because it's basically a cheaper, a little bit stripped down version of the Taranis X9D. It has essentially the same gimbals and the same range and the same set of features, and including being already loaded with OpenTX. But it's a fraction of the price. It's about $140, $150 for a QX7, which is way cheaper than the Taranis, and it's way more reasonable. So even now, if I were to upgrade to the Taranis, I probably would pick the QX7 just because of the price point, because that will allow me to buy a few receivers on top of that, no problem. The Taranis X9D, which is the de facto standard, and everybody's seen it everywhere, and you guys are all very familiar with it, so I don't really need to give you a review of it, costs about $233 these days. And both of these can use the XM Plus, which is a micro receiver with diversity, which I would recommend for most people who are doing racing. If you're doing freestyle, you might want different, or if you're doing long range stuff, you might want a completely different receiver. But the XM Plus, as far as I understand, is pretty much the same range, and it costs 21 bucks. So it is these both are the most expensive options you can choose, but they're not terrible. Like 141 bucks for the QX7 and the $21 XM Plus, not bad. So Taranis or FrSky definitely realized that they were having to compete with a cheaper market, because we also have offerings like the Hobby King Evolution controller, which I'm not really going to discuss because I have zero experience with it, and I'm not really particular about it, but I have heard that it is decent and it works quite well, and I know people who run it all the time. I haven't seen that many ones on races. It usually seems to be the Taranis stuff, and I have definitely not seen very many Radiolinks, but that'll leave up to you guys. So just to recap the radios, if you're just starting out and you're really on a budget, check out the FrSky FSI6. If you have a little bit more money to spend, just like another 50 bucks, check out the Radiolink 89. That's a super solid radio for sure. And if you're really looking for something that is like basically the industry standard and has been backed by like all sorts of brands, then check out the FrSky QX7, because the price point, 140 bucks, it's really not bad. And yeah, I can't really recommend a Taranis because I think the QX7 has all the features that you need. So that covers it in terms of gear for the radio and your goggles. So the next couple of things that I wanted to talk about are lipos, props, and which drone you should buy first. And I'm going to be very brief about that stuff because I just want to give you some advice. In terms of lipos, right now I'd say buy CNHL. Seriously, like buy CNHL. It's a great battery. It's a bit on the heavy side, but it's solid and it's cheap. I'm not sure how long that's going to last. I'm not sure if there's going to be another manufacturer that comes out with something cheap that's also decent, but for now, the CNHL all the way. That's what I've been picking up for practice, especially because I don't care about smashing these because they are cheaper. In terms of props, seriously, just get something that's durable. Like, just don't be breaking props all the time. DAL or HQ, something like that, or Racecraft, but they're a bit more expensive. Like, get some DALs. They're super solid. You can crash those a bunch of times before you have to replace them or anything like that. And in terms of like what should you buy as your first drone, honestly, pick something that will take some abuse. Pick something that can crash and survive it, because you will crash. And if you have some money in your budget, buy some extras, because you're going to need them for sure. So a couple of the RTFs one of the RTFs that I would definitely recommend would be the EACHINE Wizard 220. It's a super solid package, 20 amp ESCs, 2300 kV motors, like decent enough for you to start flying, and it's probably going to be more power than you can handle anyway. Cheap components, it's about the whole thing together, I think it's about a couple $100, like $180 for the almost ready to fly package. So honestly, like that's a great starter for you to just get flying. Another option that you can look into is check out HeliPal. HeliPal has a ton of really cool ready-to-fly packages or almost ready-to-fly drones. They are a bit more expensive than the EACHINE Wizard, but they're super solid and well-constructed. That's what I bought after I crashed my Valkyrie and destroyed it. I bought an SRD 180, so I started with a 4-inch with 4S, and it held up great. It held up super great. Make sure you get a 4mm carbon fiber frame. Honestly, that's the best advice I can give you. 4mm, because that stuff is going to last you a lot longer and it's not going to break on you all the time. So get something solid. Stay away from Valkyrie. Just stay away. That stuff is no good at all. Like, it just breaks. So get something solid that you can take some crashes. And if you can, and you have the budget, or maybe a friend to help you out, or if you're already somewhat electronically inclined, build your own drone. Like, seriously, build your own drone, because it's going to teach you how these things are put together, how they work, and it's going to demystify a bunch of stuff for you. And the next time that you have a crash or something burns up, you'll be able to just fix it yourself. And that's not only a great feeling, but it gets you back in the air a lot faster. So do build a drone if you can. There's tons of videos out there teaching you how to build drones. I have videos here that teach you how to build drones, so there's no shortage of help. And you can always hop by the fpvchat.slack.com and and ask for help from an amazing community of guys that are like literally eating, breathing, sleeping FPV all the time. Well, guys, that's pretty much all the advice that I wanted to give you in terms of gear. You can check out the description below for links of all the stuff that we discussed in here, and you can check them out for yourself, do some more research on them, get some more information, and price shop around to find the best deal that fits your budget. This is just my opinion on this stuff, and by no means does it mean that one is better than the other or anything like that. This is just what I would suggest for a newcomer, somebody who asked me like, hey, what should I get for X? So I hope that's been helpful, and I hope you guys are enjoying the Get Good series. We have more stuff coming on the channel for sure. I actually just received the TBS Race Tracker replacement board, so I'll be doing a vlog about that pretty soon, and we'll be doing a full review of the Lap RF and the TBS Race Tracker side to side and comparing the two and seeing how they stack up. So guys, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.